Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. I'm so excited to be here with you guys halfway through March 2024. My name is Katherine D. Graham. I'm a USA Today best-selling dark fantasy author. I'm working on several series right now, and I'm going to do something I have never done. I'm a little nervous. I am actually going to go through my beta readers' most recent feedback of my work in progress, which is within the Clockwork Vault, and I'm going to share it live. Hey, AF. Hey, Luna. Yes. So you may be wondering, if you're a fellow writer, possibly watching on with either horror or morbid fascination, why in the world I would share feedback of what is, I affectionately term, my garbage drafts. This draft that you're going to see on the screen is the actual book. It is pre-registered for copyright. Book concept is protected, and so if you are nervous about sending your book out to readers, but it's also not done and not ready to fully copyright yet, if you're in the US, you can go on to the uscopyright.gov site and pre-register your work. And I'm going to film a video about that and put it up later this weekend showing how to do that if you don't know. So you can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see that. I'm not overly worried about sharing my work this go round, because I'm at this point as an editor and as a writer where I feel like we are all beginning somewhere when we are writing. And sometimes seeing the work while it's in that rough phase can help, I hope, other writers feel like, oh, well, this is their rough draft, then I don't have to feel so bad. The final version that you guys get of my books, and I have a feeling most of your favorite authors' books, are not beautiful, polished pieces of work. So you're going to hear the raw, real PDF, so I couldn't change it, feedback that I got. Today would not be possible without my amazing proofreader, not proofreader, beta reader, and I haven't had a chance to introduce her, so I'm going to do that. I have her permission to talk a little bit about her Fiverr, where she is currently taking orders selectively, so you can jump on it if you are interested. But this is Fu. Fu has only recently started accepting beta reads on Fiverr, but Fu has beta read every single book that I have ever written on a developmental level. And the fact that she is giving away practically her beta reading services, she's almost like a light developmental editor type. The fact that she's doing that for only $20 is just blows my mind. So even if you don't need a beta reader quite yet, I highly recommend checking her out. So I'm going to drop her link in the chat, and it's also in the description box if you're watching on YouTube. And no, I do not get financially reimbursed for sharing this in any way. This is not a sponsored video. It's not sponsored by Fiverr or by Fu. This is just me sharing as an author to hopefully others looking for an honest opinion on their books. So that is in the description box also. I do know that Fu takes limited amounts of reads, so just sort of work that in and keep that in mind. And of course, I also offer light developmental editing. I'm a developmental editor by trade through AutoCrit, and I have a link to that in the description box as well. And obviously, if you order one from me, I'm going to get reimbursed for that. But let's pull up my book. I'm going to actually stop sharing that screen, pull up my book file. So excited and nervous at the same time. Oh. Forgive all the techiness here. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Here we go. Okay. So this is the inline comments that Fu did for me. Let me get rid of my face. Can everybody see the screen okay? I hope. So congratulations. If you've been wondering what I'm writing right now and you've been missing out, you're going to get first glimpses right here. So this is Within the Clockwork Vault. It's a new first volume in a series that I am working and hoping to get out soon. So whenever you get a beta read by a professional beta reader, someone who knows what they're doing, has been trained to do what they're doing, and is not just a casual reader like a family friend, you will usually get inline comments throughout your book. This is something that I absolutely require of beta readers. So if you're going looking on Upworks or Fiverr or wherever, or asking in writer groups, these comments are the most valuable pieces of information you get from a read, because what makes a professional beta reader different than a casual friend is they can tell you why something works and why something doesn't work, so that you know what to repeat to do better, or what you need to change exactly. I've gotten tons of casual beta reading comments that are things like, I'm so sad here, or this is an awful scene, but then they don't talk about why, because they aren't trained to be able to talk about why, right? They're readers. They're going to tell you they love it or they hate it, but it's up to you to figure out what to do with it. So getting someone who's a developmental editor or who's a beta reader with experience, who's been trained on how to communicate what's working or what's broken, is what makes your books better, what makes your writing better. So, for example, she said, this is a good opening sentence, the reader has something to pull them into the story and keep them reading, instead of, I love this opening line. So now I know that it's the immersion that works here. And that's something that I try really hard to recreate in other books, is having a good first opening hook. Now, as the story goes along, it's talking about the vault in the story, and vault doors were typically cold, soulless, faceless representations of greed and hoarded secrets. They were always mockingly silent, aside from tempting passers-by with the juicy gossip, wealth, or magic stockpiled within. And the comment that she has here is, does this mean that vault doors in this world are known to talk to tempt people towards them? And this was a really interesting catch, because I meant this more as a symbolic statement. It says they were mockingly silent. I meant for that to imply that whereas this one specific one, and it goes on to say below, Lamette's assigned vault, the Clockwork Vault, tempted her with something entirely different. It sang to her. And it's because her vault literally sings. So the fact that there could potentially be a little confusion here with whether they do actually talk and they just don't sing, or are they actually silent, is something I need to work on establishing a little bit better here in my world building, because it sets the expectation for why hers is unique. So what I actually want to get across is the other vaults are just normal vaults, and it's the unknowingness of what's behind the doors that makes them intriguing, and the fact that they're in an elven bank that is super old and contains super rare valuables that they're not going to find anywhere else in the worlds that they are in, versus hers, which actually sings. So that's a great comment. Skimming down over a little bit here, looking for more comments. Together and separate, destined beyond fate. This section was very well paced. The descriptions and dialogue made it very easy to get sucked into the story. Hooray! Love good pacing. Love the immersion. This was a really good catch too. Filed, isn't that the name of the owner of the bank? It is. I duplicated names of the bank of the characters, so I accidentally shifted her name here, and then continued to leave it in the incorrect name for the rest of the book. So I'm going to have to go back and change all of those. Great catch, Fu. The sentence is hard to read. Perhaps a change in wording or pacing could help. So the paragraph is, moving back from the deposit slot, Curator pretended not to care as I unloaded a massive black valet bag's worth of half whole and twice gems into his collection for automated sorting. But the second the tinkling of gems started, the machinery and the hot, oily smell of squid ink wax began to rise from the contraption. The elf paused, and his eyes fell closed in joyous rapture. So this is hard to follow. It's technically could read like a run-on and yet incomplete sentence at the same time. So yes, this could be worded better. But the second the tinkling of gems started, the elf paused, his eyes falling closed in joyous rapture is enough. And then I could possibly describe after that the sound of the gems going through, the smell, the fact that it's using squid ink wax and things like that. Oh, great catch on this one. There's a change out of first person POV here. So they're writing in first person. Typically, I return long after my peers, if for no other reason to avoid their covetous glares, as I deposited week after week of extra work into the machine. And then shifts into third person. Their stares bored into Lamette's back, and their discontented huffing and puffing that accompanied them brought sweat to her brow. Tense shifts, they get the best of us. So I'm actually going to go back up here to the top for a second. Here we go. This was meant to be third person from the start, and hopefully the first chapter is pretty much going to be, yeah, third person. So I actually shifted into first person. So that's a good catch. Make sure I go back and do that. I can feel the main character's excitement in this scene. Well done. So this is another example of one that she liked and said exactly why she liked it. This is my attempt at showing versus telling instead of being, I was so excited I could scream. Showing that on the page a little bit. My heart leapt into my chest. I had to bite back a smile that threatened to betray my excitement to the room. And if you are a peer writer who struggles with showing versus telling, you may know that there's a fine line between shifting your summarized tell sentence to a shown sentence like this and veering a little into what we call purple prose, which is overwriting for the sake of it sounding showy. You have to walk that line. You want readers to imply the emotions from the scene without you having to tell them outright what it is, especially since this is not a young adult book. This is an adult novel. But you also don't want to go too much into the weeds. And that's where getting the beta reader feedback can be really helpful. And so she comes back to the fact that I accidentally gave the bank owner's name to the family. So that is a change that has to be fixed through the entire book. Although at this point, I wonder if it may be easier just to change the bank owner's name. I tried to ignore the fact that I shouldn't be here, that catching me in a secret space was no better than my father's destruction of company property, but the thought gnawed at me like a dog on a second-hand bone. Slipping off my shoes, I plucked them from the floor, and relief on the sensations of the gears reverberated through my feet to tell me when the elevator was slowing down. So why would she sneak in here if the risks are that great? What could she hope to gain by sneaking in here, and what caused her to suddenly change her mind from testifying in court? These are story holes that are vital to the opening of a book. And all that I sent Fu at this point was the first chapter of the book, or first beginning, to make sure I was on the right track, because I really struggle with beginnings. But I think there are so many good plot questions here that I need to establish, especially the stakes, right? I have to have clear stakes, a clear reason for the reader to care. If you don't care, it might be entertaining to read, but you're not going to be invested in it like someone who has something that's high at stake. So establishing a little earlier here that the alternative is I know my parents are going to be banished to the waste and they are going to die. This goes down and I could join them, but maybe I could find a way to get us all out. Her risking her own freedom when right now she would walk away free and her parents would be the ones banished in order to establish this freedom for them, is the opening stake of the story. It's what's driving this character through the story. And the fact that that didn't come through clearly enough is a warning sign to me that I need to go back. I need to go back to the very beginning where she's first announced free. She's paid off her indentured servitude and she sees her parents arrested. And there needs to be a clarifying moment to show what her parents mean to her, to where she would sacrifice all the freedom she just got in order for the events leading up to this point to make sense. Well, obviously, if you love somebody so much you would die for them, then giving up your own freedom in order to try to give them their life back is worth it. But you can't assume that what's obvious to you is going to be obvious to readers, because when I go back and think about what happens in this chapter, she barely gets but 2 lines with her parents present, I believe. And then the rest of the time she's sort of sneaking around, so that investment isn't there. What does scuffing have to do with anything going on right now? The scuffing is a minor world building detail that I had mentioned earlier, which shows where the automatons go. So her following where the scuff marks is leading her in the direction that they took her parents, was my original thought. Small world building detail that may have fallen through there, though. The high queens among the goddess courts may have controlled every other aspect of Trelana, but within these walls, the gems stopped at the magistrate's desk, and that was meant to be a play on our Earth cliche of the buck stops here. This is a really good example of how sometimes you might have a cliche and a twist on an idiom that works really well in your head, that in your completely separate fantasy world, a slight word shift doesn't make a difference. So if you're watching live, I'd be curious to know, or if you're watching the replay and you want to leave in the comments, if you saw the gem stopped at the magistrate's desk, does that hit you the same way as the buck stopped here? And if not, all the better. You know, the great point for beta readers know best. And I would probably cut that out and just make it a completely original idiom for their world and their ideology, instead of trying to shift one word into ours. Politeness. What was politeness in a case like this? If I was not a piff, I could have time added just for being up here uninvited. Now, though, the risk was not nearly as great. Why would she think this when her family was indentured for trespassing? Wouldn't she know the risk better than most? I agree. That was a confusing statement. How is the risk any less now that she's actually there in the place where she's not supposed to be? How was it? Oversight. Flanked in front and behind by guardians I could never evade or defeat, I forced out my fear and tension with a slow, calculated breath, rolling my shoulders and conjuring up an emotionless mask of resolve. If the bank owners have automatons that surpass any guardian, and guardian in this case is the vault guardians, the people who guard the most elite bank vaults and items, if the bank owners have automatons that surpass any guardian's abilities, then why bother having guardians at all? So true. I'm so glad that she got this before this went to press so I can fix it. Seriously, if they are no better than a simple automaton that patrols the dormitories, why are they needing people? That it makes their entire existence, in a nutshell, the entire premise the book started on, a moot point. So Have to be creative in how I decide to fix that. I've got several options there. I can take that sentence out and it won't be a problem at all. I could change this to I dare not defeat, implying that she most definitely could defeat them, but that she doesn't want to because she's worried about things being worse for her parents or worse for her. Decisions. And as much as I said that beta reader feedback is good to help you pinpoint what you've done correct and what you've done wrong, what you could do better, don't confuse them with a developmental editor flat out. They're not going to suggest fixes for your holes. They are beta readers. So they're going to give you a reader's perspective on where a hole could be, but it's up to you. And if you feel like you need it, potentially a full developmental edit from a developmental editor to tell you how you could fix those holes. But a beta read is a great place to start. And they're also way cheaper. The insult of even suggesting slapped the air from her lungs. Yep, changed tenses here. Broke out of the immersion of the scene. So I use first person in some of my books, which are first person books the whole way through, like The Vow That Twisted Fate, to really bring in a character focused story as opposed to a plot focused story where I tend to write more in third person. And so in first person, my goal as a writer is to make readers feel like they are literally standing there. Loosening my tongue took all my willpower against this man. I'm here to secure the release of my parents, I said. The magistrate didn't look away, didn't blink. He kept my gaze and my eyes began to burn. I knew this game, though. I'd trained for it. I would not blink first. So when I shift this into third person for the sake of the book, some of that immersion, or what we call deep POV, is going to be lost because I can no longer be in her head explaining it as if I am her. Even in what we call a third person restricted or close POV or limited POV, you're still going to be an outside person. So if I rewrite this in third person, it's going to be loosening her tongue took all her willpower. I'm here to secure the release of my parents, she said. The magistrate didn't look away, didn't blink. He kept her gaze until her eyes began to burn. She knew this game. She'd trained for it. She would not blink first. And so it's the same exact thing, but it makes you feel like an observer instead of like you are her. So I've got to go through, though, because the majority of the book is third person, as I said, I've got to go through and make that all consistent. Here we go. The hallway is silent. Tarek typically snores and snores loudly. This is one of her peers that guards the vault. He is never silent, breathing through his mouth while awake, despite his years of training. I take a step back. His shoulders are slumped at an odd angle, and I've shifted to first person here again, too. If you can't tell what my default writing style is. His shoulders are slumped at an odd angle, his hands not rested in his lap, but tossed back against the walls. His scythe, which is identical to mine, lays against the wall on the floor nearby. But as keen as her hearing is supposed to be and on high alert, would she have noticed the lack of breathing when she entered the hallway? Yes, she should have. It was a great catch. All right, so that is the extent of what I sent in that PDF. So now we're going to take a look at Foo's report. So Foo offers a in-depth report add-on, which is $5 or $10, I believe, right now, as of March 2024, and it was worth every penny. I think otherwise you get a summarized beta report, which is standard for a lot of professional beta readers. But in here, as you can see, she breaks down the plot, she breaks down the characters, the world building, and overall impression of the book. And while you really need to have gone through specific comments in the inline comments first in order to, I think, necessarily understand all of a beta reader's feedback, it's still important to have the summarized overview. So personally, as a writer, I don't start with the overall critique. I start by reading through all the comments and sort of sectioning off like I did with you guys. Here's the ones I need to go into fix tenses for. Here's the ones where I have holes. I'm making notes to myself to go back to fix this. And then I look at the summary and see if there's any sweeping things I missed instead of reading the summary first. And I do this because when I first got a book done as a writer, even though I'm an editor by trade, it can sting getting your work looked at, even though it's constructive criticism through and through. And I read the overall report for The Violet Twisted Fate by a different beta reader, not Fu, and it was so much that had to be done that I was so discouraged, and I actually quit writing for a solid year. And then came back because of my husband, picked it up, and started working through it, and started working through the comments that she had left in the book for me instead of the overall critique. And it was more manageable, and it stung less seeing real life, real time examples. I know everybody writes a little different, and they take feedback a little different. Luna's good about balancing positive and negative. There's also brutally honest beta readers. I tend to be just as honest as it can be. If you do something really well, I will give you kudos for it. But I'm a developmental editor. So most of what I would call out in a book are things that are unclear or that need changes, whereas a professional beta reader may opt to show their more like overall experience a bit more. So it can be a little easier on our very fragile writer's egos if you also have one. If you don't, I need your secret. But if you're like me, to start off with someone who's going to tell you, okay, you shift tenses here. This makes no sense. You got their thing wrong. Is this a hole? Why did they even need guardians if they have these strong robots? But then also marry that with some positivity of things that you did well. So you know that this book is still worth writing, I guess. In what I have of the story, Lamette as an indentured guardian finally gains her freedom. And I think I'm not going to read the whole critique off. It would be a little much for the sake of this live, and I want to respect everybody's time. But when you read a beta reader's critique report, like I'm reading through this one, remember that you paid them to give you an opinion of your book as an outside objective reader, and try to avoid the urge to ask them how they missed something because they got it wrong. Because you're not paying them to get your book right like you would the developmental edit. You're paying them to tell you how an actual reader would take the book. So I'm reading through this plot, this pacing, and getting things that Fu thinks about these characters, impressions she has about the kind of people they are, the kind of world they're in, and the plot and the theme of the story. And again, the lack of stakes. And I might think some of these things are clearer than they are, but if they're not going through to Fu and they don't go through to my other two beta readers, then I've failed to accurately portray what I wanted. So instead of saying, well, they didn't get it right, this helps me not put out a book that my actual readers are going to say she didn't get it right, and instead I could fix it now. And that's really just a side note of something I personally struggle with as a writer a great deal, but gets a little easier. This is book 10. So I found that by book 10, I had no emotional heartache about saying, yep, that's a hole. Let's fix that. Those automatons are not more powerful than these guardians. So why is she not fighting them? Let's just fix these things, make this a better story for our readers, and move on. But Fu, if you are watching, thank you so, so much for the great feedback that you gave, for all the time that you spent reading the opening and putting together the critique, because it really was invaluable. And I highly do recommend Fu to people who are watching again to go see if she has openings on her Fiverr if you're looking for a very affordable and very thorough read. Oh, I'm so excited to be working. I have 3 series, so I actually have a book that's in the Lord's Gambit series, a full book, off with Maddie, who's one of my other beta readers, and, I'm working on finishing off Vanguard of Justice right now, making some adjustments to some developmental feedback I got that wasn't what I wanted about one of the main characters, so I'm having to do some major revisions for her. And then I've got Within the Clockwork Vault. So I have the 3 books, the one that is in drafting, the one that's in revising, and the one that is off with an editor. And so lots going on for 2024. Thank you all so much for being here, for watching. I wish you all the best with your own books. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And yeah, I'm excited for 2024. I'll be back soon, as I said, with more information on self-publishing. Take care, everybody. Bye.